A piece that I did when I was in graduate school. I became a ceramist as a midlife career change. I decided to go back and finish my BFA and get an MFA. And when I started back at the University of Kansas around 1990, I was a sculptor, but with a background as an illustrator. Entonces estaba haciendo muchos logos. I was branding. I was also an editorial cartoonist. So I designed a lot of T-shirts. I did a lot of cartooning and illustration for books, things like that. That was my background for most of my life. And so I took Ceramics 1 and it changed my life. And immediately I changed my major to ceramics, and the rest for me is history. So I show you this piece because it was one of the first figurative piezas that I made. And it's entitled Las Meninas. I'm referring to, the paintings of Velázquez. And this was also a time when I was beginning to really develop a vocabulary of images and marks on my work. And I did not know at that time really what these marks meant. They kind of came to me, I kind of channeled them. I know it sounds funny, but that's what happened. And this was one of the first pieces that I made that I began to have some color saturation. This piece was in my master's thesis show. And this piece it was an important piece for me because it was on the cover of Ceramics Monthly, and my phone started ringing a lot after I was in Ceramics Monthly. This is entitled Ship of Fools. And this is all porcelana, it's porcelain, and mixed media. You can see that there is bronze and some copper at the top. I was a sculptor, I was a metalsmith before I understood anything about clay. So of course I brought my drawing skills, my design skills, and also my tendency to be narrativa. I tell stories with my work. This was called Ship of Fools. I began to really become interested in color and pattern, and you can see that I show some of what I refer to as my vocabulary of imagery, and my images oftentimes are biomorphic or biomorphica. I don't know the correct word on that, but I love the use of pattern, and I also tend to cover my surfaces with images, and these images are pretty typical of what I would continue to make. Here's another. These are egg trays, by the way, deviled egg trays. I begin to give my pieces titles, a veces sonso, or a narrative títulos, and this one is Damn Deviled Egg Tray Thinks It's Alive, Wants to Go to Las Vegas and Serve Wayne Newton. This is also porcelain. It's fired to cone 7, which is about, in Fahrenheit, about 2,250 degrees Fahrenheit. It's pretty hot. This piece, you know, I begin to think about things like positive, negative space, negative shapes, contrast, visual movement. You know, I'm nearly always I'm asymmetrical. I'm not a very formal artist. I work asymmetrically, that is visually. And this also is mixed media. The top is sterling. You can see where I cast sterling silver, plata, at the top. This is also, it's a biomorphic teapot because the images in color, you can't really tell very easily, but they are very narrative and they talk about my life. The fact that I was married and I had 2 children. I believe that aliens exist. And so there was a lot of that sort of fun stuff. This is one of the first teapots I made that I begin to use a frog, sapo, but I use a mutant frog. I use frogs with extra legs, extra arms, because I am increasingly more concerned with our ecology. And that's one of the things that I share with Diego in our work together in which we collaborate. We both work in our own narrative way, but we're both very, very concerned about the environment as well, as you know about Diego's work. This is a piece quite tall. It's más que un metro. It's metro y tanto. And it's it talks about Gaia, who was the original earth goddess. Kind of, we would think now of Pachamama or Mother Earth. And I wanted to think about her in terms of classic beauty, not the kind of beauty that's very big and round and like Rubens or, you know, Botticelli, the Birth of Venus, but more like, you know, a woman that has had childbirth, and I believe that we come from Africa mostly, so I wanted to show beauty, but in a more, in my mind, a more accurate way. You know, her breasts have sagged. She's not voluptuous. You can see her ribs, but this is entitled Venus Gaia. And all the objects at the bottom, they are all offerings, ofertas, and they are noisemakers. They rattle, so you can shake them and they make noise. I'm a musician also. I have a band and I've played in bands all my life, so I love things that make noise. So I make ocarinas también and flautas, things like that. This is where I really began to connect with Mato Ortiz. I was teaching, and one of my students, I was working on this piece, and one of my students came running in to my office and he said, "Mr. Fields, look." And he showed me the cover of Archaeology magazine. And it was talking about the smoking pots of Paquimé, of Casas Grandes, of Mato Ortiz. Well, not Mato Ortiz, of Casas Grandes, because this was an archaeology magazine and they were looking at old, small, shamanic smoking pots, what they called them. This looked so much like it, it took my breath away. except this is about, oh, 2/3 of a meter tall. It's pretty big. And this is one of my santo pieces. I do works, I've created my own santos. And this is Saint Efficacious. And so I make work that that is part of this narrative, this historia narrativa, and this is mojo oil for to fight vampires and werewolves and zombies and to help us during difficult times. So it's like aceite de serpiente, except this is real. This is a teapot, and you can see a lot of my imagery that is, in this case, en este caso, es más más natural. There's flores, there's bugs, and things like that. But that is a vocabulary of imagery that I learned very quickly when I went to Mata Ortiz for the first time about 20 years ago, and started going to Mata Ortiz regularmente, that we shared some of the same visual elements, and they are called entoptics. They come from communities that have shamanism, or from people that have had psychedelic experiences, and that would be me, or people that have had severe head trauma, and I've had severe head trauma. So I'm sure that's why I've kind of channeled these images and brought them into my artwork. They have meaning to me. I'm also very involved environmentally, and this piece is about Fukushima. You can see sapos, mutant frogs, and this is this is a satire, and it's a political comment about Fukushima, where the reactor number 1 is still offloading into the Pacific Ocean. When it was hit by a tsunami, it was entirely breached and compromised, and they think they will be able to control it in maybe 40 years. So there's a lot of strange stuff going on right now in the Pacific. This is an atomic sake set, also satire. You may remember Exxon Valdez. So I made this piece. I was awarded a McKnight Fellowship, and at my show, I had this for the first time, and this is all out of clay, except for the sea urchin spines on that plant sort of thing, and a woman that was attending the show, she said, "Where did you get that cup and saucer?" And I said, "I made it," and then did a deconstruct, and she told me I was lying. That she asked me, "Did I go to Alaska to find that?" I said, "No, I threw it on the wheel. I deconstructed it." She said, "It has the logo." And I said, "I know, but I designed that logo and had ceramic decals made." And she left the show very angry, telling me I was a liar. So I succeeded. Here's another with my friend, my sapo friend, my frog friend. I call him Prince Darwin now. And this series that I work in is called Darwin Was Right and Exxon Helped. You can see another image. And it also has copper that I have etched, acid etched. So I continue to work with mixed media. That's one of the things that Diego and I are doing. We're bringing different media together, and I will start a piece and then I'll send it to him and he can finish it, or he might work on it, send it back to me. And then we don't really tell each other what to do. It's just kind of it's magic. I believe that sometimes in collaboration, 1+1 is more than 2. And Diego and I have been able to create some very interesting work. This is more environmental stuff. This is a bug spray insecticide with DDT or DDT. And this is a DDT set. It's complete with the teapot, mugs, sugar, crema, all of that. Here's another one. This might be the one that Diego has. We traded a piece some time ago. This also was entered in a competition in Silver City, New Mexico. And I was required to make a piece and then have a tile that related to that piece. So this was, very obvious and easy for me to do. But this is all, it's fairly big. It's, 20 inches tall, I suppose, somewhere around there. There's a better view of it. This is a piece that deals with neo-membrace, the membrace culture, which in many cases has been destroyed by Anglos, by white people. And so I have included a can or a container of Death Cloud bug spray, and there's Prince Darwin up there. And then you can look into it and you can see old membrace. Prince Darwin is looking at what the membrace used to see in a frog. And then there's a lot of objects and reliquaries inside. A broken cowboy pistol, a cowboy, an Indian. There's a sheriff's badge in there, beads, varias cosas. This is an older piece. It's entitled King Tubby Holds Court. It's a very small image. I'm sorry about that. I had problems formatting some of my images into this PowerPoint format. But this is also a large piece. It's almost casi un metro, poco menos. And it has sea urchin spines as well above the head. This is stoneware and porcelain. It was fired to cone 10, which is 2,350 degrees Fahrenheit. This is another Santo piece. This is Saint Hiram Maxim. He's the patron saint of people that are engaged in the fight against the zombie apocalypse and people that are exposed to automatic gunfire. Here's another view of it. This is a Mojo oil decanter. You can see that there is a tap that would be like a beer tap. And then the story of Saint Hiram Maxim. Here's another Saint Hiram Maxim Mojo oil decanter. His nickname is Old Zombie Killer. He invented the machine gun. And so many millions and millions of people have died because of his invention. And this is a Sotol bottle. I think most of you or some of you know what Sotol is. It's just a a better, more refined. It's better than tequila, por ejemplo. And you can see on the back, it's chingon cabron. It's late night anti-stupidity formula. I wish I had some of this when I was in high school. And finally, this is my newest teapot. And I continue to use those entoptics. I continue to use mixed media, much as Diego is continuing to use more and different materials. He's using gold lusters and he's using actual metal. We have etched bronze and copper, some of those sort of materials. And I'm very excited about where Diego and I will be taking our work. So this is the end of my slides. Are there any questions at this point?
How much does it take you to make a piece?
That is the most often asked question. I have one time I charted my hours. And so the head on this Gaia piece, you can't see it, but down the neck on the inside, there is a piece of maple madera that I put on a lathe. And then at the bottom of it, I put metal to make it heavy at the bottom because the top was very top heavy. So there's a lot of, I spent about 200 hours on the head, just the head. And then the body, I don't know how long that took. Sometimes I don't want to know how many hours I'm working on a piece because I don't want to know how much money I'm actually making per hour. Because I could make more money as a plumber, or an auto mechanic.
No, yeah, that makes sense.
And I made this while I was teaching at a university. So that's one of the advantages of teaching is that in my case, I was a professor, but I was also the resident artist. So they gave me a studio, they gave me all my materials for free, and I could fire as much as I wanted. So it was a pretty nice situation for me. So I didn't have to think about, the price. I sold this for a lot of money, but I put a lot of hours into it too. So.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Are there any other questions, or is it time for me to stop, or what would you like me to do? I know I've gone longer than 15 minutes. Is Diego on yet? Hey, Diego.
¿Me pueden escuchar ahora?
I can hear you.
Sí.
Ok, ya está resuelto entonces. Sí, no sé si alguien más de los participantes tenga preguntas para Marko o comentarios.
I do have a question, Marko.
Okay. Yeah.
What inspires you to make these abstract forms? Like, do you imagine them, or do you like improvise them while you're making them?
That's a good question. My process, I think it's similar to Diego's process in that we both draw a lot. So if I'm making a really ambitious piece, I know where I'm going when I'm doing it. I don't, I mean, I do believe in serendipity, but I believe my creative process is about 3% conceptualization. It's 95% work, just doing it and putting all the time in. And I think it's a mistake to say, well, that's good enough, because I try to do a full 95%, and then that gives me about 2% of maybe magic. And sometimes a piece takes on a life of its own while I'm working on it. But generally, normalmente, I know where I'm going. I've seen it in my mind's eye. I've drawn it. My pieces are complex oftentimes. So I hand build, I use slabs, I use coils, I put them all together, I carve, I etch, I incise, I use slips. And the one thing that my work is, though, it's always narrative. There's a narrative element to my work.
Well, thank you. It is pretty impressive what your work is, and well, it's a pleasure. Thank you.
Well, thank you. That's very nice. It's great working with Diego. I think we both really like each other's work, and we collaborate kind of seamlessly. I think we understand where we're going. When I look at his work or he looks at mine, I think we connect with it, and I want to do more, bigger, more substantial, more significant work with Diego. And we're planning to do that. We've had a traveling show that was stopped by COVID-19 this year. But we'll start it again next year. Eventualmente, yo puedo viajar por México. I'm very frustrated. So I won't get political because I get too upset. Our president is insane, and it's a problem. Silence.
Silence. ¿Alguien tiene alguna pregunta? ¿Alguien que no haya entendido algo por el idioma y yo le puedo traducir, o alguien más quizás del equipo?
Can I ask something?
Por supuesto.
Okay, so when you're working on a piece, when do you know it's time to stop, or like it's the perfect thing you wanted to do?
That's a good question, because when I was young, as a young artist, sometimes I would go too far, or sometimes I would have a piece that was going nowhere and I would keep working on it. So I work on 3 or 4 pieces at a time. Sometimes right now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, I have 5 pieces right now I'm working on. Sometimes I would have and I would keep working on it.